Greetings. Today's talk focuses on the fact that we've been sort of reviewing what's been going on with Tesla and competitors. One aspect of the Tesla sort of miracle and challenge for competitors is the whole everything surrounding supercharger ability and its impact both on Tesla, customers, and competitors trying to compete with Tesla. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If you're first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Also note that your likes and comments have a huge impact on the placement of our show and the growth of the channel. We also have ads and would appreciate just 5 or 10 seconds of viewing prior to bailing. This is also a help to the channel. And we're also on Patreon and could use your support there. One last note is that we actually have a Tesla Fan Insight on Facebook. We did a post today of a number of photos, kind of a nocturnal photo session at the Tyson's Corner service facility. And I think some of the photos and images we post there, I think you might find helpful in your knowledge of what's going on at Tesla, particularly if you're not near a service facility in terms of what to expect. So we did a show about Bob Lutz and his suggestion that Tesla's going under. What was interesting about the show is that we got a lot of response from a number of viewers in terms of, you know, what is going on with the folks over at GM and other firms relative to their ability to compete with Tesla. The number one answer from Bob Lutz, Daimler, benz, VW, and others is that a whole bunch of individuals have announced current vehicles that they plan, or the amount of money they're going to spend, how many vehicles they're going to be introducing in 2021 or 2022, but we really haven't seen anything that represents huge competition for Tesla. And so today, sort of we're covering an issue that I find interesting, which is what's going on with the whole supercharger arena and how is this affecting customers? So I pose these questions because what's interesting to note is there are many customers who are paying large amounts of dollars, that's $50,000 plus for a vehicle, and you expect a certain collection of service and other attributes of the vehicles you're getting. And the reality is that many of these customers, even with a $15,000 to $20,000 price advantage from competing automobiles, are choosing Tesla as a solution. So there are a number of examples of how this is rolling out. But one example that pops to mind is in the United States and in Europe, Daimler-Benz has elected to go to all electric for their smart car. When it comes to this vehicle, about a 100-mile range vehicle, only 16 of, I believe, 87 Daimler distribution points in the United States have been willing to accept that change from a gasoline-powered option to an all-electric option for the smart car. In Europe, we haven't really seen all the numbers that are going on, but I think Daimler has more power to control what those companies do there. But basically, in those same places where the Daimler distributors are choosing not to even offer a product, Tesla is selling Model 3s in large numbers. So there's an interesting bifurcation going on right now, which is basically consumers are saying, if you ain't got no supercharger or fast charging capability, we're not interested. Now, this is kind of a disaster, and the disaster, as we've discussed, has showed up in a number of ways. Another example of the disaster illustration is from Fiat. Prior to the death of the CEO of Fiat Chrysler, he had done a talk where he said, please do not buy my cars because we lose $15,000 on every Fiat 500 that you purchase. And so therefore, by you not purchasing them and we having them, we save $15,000 a car. It's kind of unusual to have the CEO of a big company ask you not to buy their cars but I just thought this was one of the most comical elements. As you all know, the reason why Fiat is losing 15,000 a car, GM is losing 10,000 a car, and others are losing money on these vehicles, is that there's a special tax credit situation that goes on where particularly California requires all manufacturers to offer better emissions or lower emissions or electric vehicles. And so the way to get out of this is to simply produce cars under those parameters, make the number fairly low, so you lose $500 million a year to $1 billion, and then you don't have to worry about your EV component. And so it's one of the reasons why GM is producing the vehicle in the United States, selling the Bolt, but is not making any efforts to push those to international markets because of how much they're losing money on every car. So getting back to our discussion of superchargers, as we all know, there's a two-component part to the supercharger solution. Number one is that if you produce a supercharging facility, the battery types that you're building have to be able to handle the supercharging and the heat generated by doing so. And right now, the 18650 battery, Tesla is able to have a configuration that works for supercharging and a charger that goes with it. But we actually haven't seen any other manufacturer offering supercharger capability on their 18650 battery successfully. And the one manufacturer that seems to have been making the most noise, but we really haven't seen them in action yet, is Porsche, with their charging facility at the US headquarters in Atlanta. In theory, you can go there with the test vehicles they currently have and do a charging speed that's actually double the charging rate of Tesla. The issue I've been wondering about, and I'm looking forward to our user commentary on this, is the fact that if you try to charge at twice the pace that Tesla is offering, it might work short term, but what if you fry those batteries and now you have a $50,000 battery pack that is no longer useful? So it's an interesting situation. I would argue that bottom line, it's great to see VW enter after they had the charging scandal. It clearly affected their thought process on what they're doing. But in essence, what we have going on right now is consumers are saying, no supercharger, no interest. And it's really hard for the manufacturers to respond on this supercharger demand because nobody that's supplying, be it all the Korean manufacturers or Samsung being the leaders, are really not offering a way for those manufacturers buying their batteries to supercharge those batteries yet. So I believe that also the number one reason why every manufacturer is delayed on delivery is that without a supercharger capable battery, it makes no sense to deliver any vehicles currently. Hence, we're seeing the situation that we have currently, which is everyone has announced they're hoping to have supercharger capability within the next 2 years. It's currently not ready. And if they don't have that capability, the consumers have fairly low interest in that situation. I view again that the very locations that are consumers are not interested in buying Mercedes in all battery configurations are places where the Model 3 is selling well. Now, for the last segment of this show, I wanted to sort of dive into what I call the mystery of Model 3 production, which focuses on the fact that right now, the Model 3 is selling well in the United States. We've gotten through 100,000 vehicles in sales in Canada and the US, and we've pretty much wiped out demand, at least at the reservation level for the Model 3. And now sort of there's interest to see what's going to happen in terms of consumer demand without reservation for the Model 3 in the US markets. Sales have been strong, and if the sales hold up, it'll delay deliveries to Europe. If they don't hold up, it means Europe gets those vehicles earlier. So I think the news is good. Now, the last thing I wanted to cover relative to the big makes, BMW, VW, and Mercedes, is we're in October now, and in theory, the first week of January is when Europe, I think Amsterdam, etc., are going to start seeing Model 3 sales. The thing that I'm fascinated by is there's something called shorting stocks, which means you can bet on stock prices declining. So based on the impact of how entering Europe is going to affect things, I'm just fascinated by the fact that unless something miracle happens, the Model 3 is going to do to sales of all the European manufacturers, particularly the German manufacturers in Europe, what they're doing in the US, if not worse. So I actually think this is going to start affecting earning and stock prices for these large companies. And I therefore think it might be in your best interest to learn about shorting stocks or buying puts on stocks, because I do believe that once Model 3 hits Europe, it's going to take a huge bite out of what's going on in the European stock markets going forward for competing manufacturers to Tesla. So we'll see what happens. I'm pretty confident this is going to occur. I actually think the market penetration of the Model 3 in Europe is going to be double that of the United States, because Europe has such a so much higher a fuel price. But some of my European country friends are saying that the cost of electricity is fairly high, so people may not be as incentivized on that angle. We'll see what happens. I think Norway is a winner because of how they produce their electricity, but I just think it's going to be a big deal in Europe once Model 3 hits. And I actually also think that the demand for Model 3 is really going to screw up the timeline of deliveries of the semi-trucks, because once those vehicles are on the roads and doing well, I think you'll go well beyond the reservation list to a lot more people interested in buying. So at this segment of the show, I wanted to say hello to Donovan. I wanted to say hello relative to comments on decline of Sears and Kmart. Yeah, they could sell Teslas in those facilities. I don't think will happen. Yeah, all over Europe, there's a long waiting list. But, you know, what we're all waiting for is to find out what happens when the waiting list is run through. How is the penetration for non-waiting list customers who couldn't afford to wait that long? And that's when things are going to get interesting. Now, another interesting aspect of what's going on with the Tesla miracle here in the United States, and I think Europe is going to get hit with this as well, is that many of the Tesla buyers for Model 3 have now started, when they go, they're selling their ICE vehicle. And this is also a hit to the sales of the manufacturers, because you now have a large group of used vehicles hitting the market where the manufacturer doesn't make any money off of those vehicles hitting. So I'm fascinated by the situation, because basically you have a really bad deal where European and American makes are getting hit with the Tesla miracle by not getting the sales directly, and then indirectly getting hit by those used vehicles being sold between customers. And so I just think this double dip hit to the revenue of the big companies is actually a disaster that's worth noting. So at any rate, I think it's great for Tesla, what's going on. I don't see Bob Lutz's analysis of them going out of business, because I think Elon is cutting back on extra projects that would affect profitability. We're still waiting on new numbers and to see what happens. Donovan, thanks for the commentary on the S75 being what people are buying while they can't get Model 3s, on lowering of price. You know, it's good to get information like this to know what Tesla's process is in different places. At this point of the show, I typically end my comments on Tesla and sneak into areas that I think folks might find useful health-wise. I somewhat became an expert on sleep research while I was at Stanford, and I wanted to encourage all of you to consider, for a 2-week period, going to bed and waking up at the same time every day. The reason for this, it puts your body in a circadian rhythm that is sleep and wake consistent constantly. And what this rhythm will allow is it allows you to potentially get plenty of rest and put your body on the same body clock all the time, so that it'll be a lot healthier circumstance for you. As usual, I'm about to do my 20 leg lifts for both legs to help out there. Also encourage you to not go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4 hours, will allow you to get maximum digestion and not cause acid reflux or potentially cancer from that acid sitting on you as you sleep. I'm actually taking a multi as well as omega-3, and I'd highly recommend this as well. I want to thank all of you for taking time out to join us. We'll have our next show on Friday. Hopefully we'll have some numbers to talk about from Tesla. We have an interesting sort of brewing show that I think you guys will find fascinating as usual. Again, your comments, likes, and subscription definitely affect interest and what ends up happening with our show, and so therefore we appreciate all of those. Reminder, please watch us on YouTube. There are some folks trying to steal our show, and we appreciate your support in that manner as well. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. In German we say Tschüss, macht's gut. French, au revoir. Hebrew, lehitraot. Hoda hafez in Farsi. Farvel, Dutch. And wanted to, in Jamaica we say Nuff respect wa good man. And thanks for joining us today. Look forward to our next conversation on Friday. And again, please take time to like, subscribe, and comment. Have a good day.